This is the story of Hansel and Gretel. Hansel and Gretel lived by the forest with their stepmother and their father, who was a poor woodcutter. One evening, the family had nothing to eat but a few crusts of bread. Hansel and Gretel went to bed feeling hungry. As they lay there, they heard their stepmother and father talking. "There are too many mouths to feed," said their stepmother. "We must take your children into the forest and leave them there." "Never!" cried their father. "Well, I'm not going to starve," their stepmother barked. "Those children are going, and that is that." Gretel began to cry, but Hansel comforted her. "Don't worry," he said. "I'll think of something." The next morning, Hansel and Gretel's stepmother woke the children at daybreak. "Get up," she ordered. "We're going into the forest to chop wood." She gave Hansel and Gretel a crust of bread for each of their lunch. Hansel broke his bread into tiny pieces in his pocket, and as they walked along, he secretly dropped a trail of crumbs on the ground. Deep in the forest, Hansel and Gretel's father built them a fire. "Your stepmother and I are going to chop wood now," he said. "We'll return for you at sunset." After a while, the children shared Gretel's bread, and then they curled up at the foot of an old oak tree and fell fast asleep. When Hansel and Gretel woke up, it was dark and their little fire had gone out. "I want to go home," Gretel whimpered. "Don't worry," said Hansel. "We'll just follow the trail of breadcrumbs I left." But the breadcrumbs were gone. The forest birds had eaten them all up. "We'll wait until morning," Hansel said. "When it's light, we'll find our way home." "Woot, woot!" The owl was calling to them in the forest. The next morning, the children were woken by the sound of birds singing. In the tree above them, a snow-white bird flapped its wings as if to beckon them. "Look," cried Hansel, "maybe that bird will lead us home." But the white bird led them deeper into the forest to a little house made of gingerbread. The roof was dripping with sugary icing, the windows were framed with candy canes, and the yard was filled with colorful lollipops. Delighted, the hungry children began to feast upon the candies. Suddenly, the door opened, and a croaky voice came from inside. "Nibble, nibble like a mouse, who is nibbling at my house?" And an old woman hobbled out, leaning on a crooked stick. "I can't see very well," she said. "Who are you?" "Just two hungry children," Hansel replied. "Ah," said the old woman, "well, you better come inside, and I will make you a proper meal." The old woman placed Hansel and Gretel at the table, and they piled high with delicious pancakes. They ate and ate until they were ready to burst. Then she showed them to two little beds. Hansel and Gretel snuggled down under the soft blankets and fell fast asleep. But Hansel and Gretel didn't know that the kind old woman was really a wicked witch. And she watched them sleep. She cackled, "I'll soon fatten these two up, and they will make me a proper meal." The following morning, the witch dragged Hansel from his bed and threw him into a cage. Then she made Gretel cook her brother a big breakfast. "Your brother is too skinny," the witch told Gretel. "I'll keep him locked up until he is nice and plump. And then I'll eat him up." Over the next few days, Hansel ate as much food as he could, and every morning the witch made him stick out his finger so she could feel whether he was fat enough to eat. But Hansel was clever. He knew the old witch could hardly see, so he stuck out a chicken bone through the cage instead. "Still too scrawny," the witch would say. One day, the witch grew tired of waiting. "Whether he be fatter or thinner, I'll have Hansel for my dinner," she crowed. "Light the oven," the witch ordered Gretel. "Now crawl in and see whether it's hot enough." Gretel knew what the witch was planning to cook her as well, so she decided to trick the witch. "The oven's much too small for me," she said. "Even I could fit inside that oven. Look," said the witch, sticking her head inside. The witch let out a big yow as Gretel pushed her into the oven and slammed the door shut. Gretel freed Hansel from his cage, and they danced happily around the kitchen. "We're safe, we're safe." When the children looked around the witch's house, they found chests crammed with gold and sparkling jewels. They filled their pockets before they set off for home. Back in the woods, the white bird beckoned to them again. This time it led them straight home, where their delighted father greeted them with hugs and kisses. He told them that their cruel stepmother had died, so they had nothing to fear. Hansel and Gretel showed him the treasure they had found. "We'll never go hungry again," he said. And they all lived happily ever after, and the white bird sat on their rooftop and sang for them every day. The end.